Welcome to Muck You, the podcast that rips through the BS of American politics with zero apologies. This week, we're exposing the latest political scams and fighting for what matters. I'm David Wheeler, and meet my co-host, a real deal warrior for change, and our next congressman for NC11, Colonel Mo Davis. Grab a shovel, and let's dig into the muck on Muck You. Take it away, Colonel.
Well, thanks, David, and it's a pleasure to be back with everyone on a kind of a cool and cloudy day here in Western North Carolina. But continuing with our tradition, got another great guest today, and one I'm sure you're going to find interesting. We've got Republican Representative Jack Kimball. He's a representative of California's 54th Congressional District, and I'm sure all the listeners on here know that the California's 54th Congressional District is probably the most diverse district in California. It extends all the way from the Sierra Nevada mountains down to the coast, and it includes the largest yoga institute in America and also one of the largest militia movements. So it really is just a very diverse district to represent. Representative Kimball's also a best-selling author. He's got a book out called Detective Jesus, Thou Shalt Not Kill, in which he tries to relate to young people and to convert them over by portraying Jesus as a Chicago police detective in the 1970s. So, Representative Kimball, thank you so much for taking time out of your, I know, busy schedule up in Washington to join us today.
Thanks. It's actually, and you might find this out yourself, it's actually not that busy. Everything is executive order now. So I have another Settlers of Catan game. We have a big tournament going coming up later this afternoon, but otherwise I'm pretty much just sitting back. The big beautiful bill is in the Senate now, so we don't really have to worry about that anymore. And I'm not renaming anything for another couple of weeks.
All right. Well, listen, I know you're on the far end of the conservative scale, so I'm wondering, does it bother you that you and your colleagues are collecting federal salaries when, as you said, the government's being run by executive order rather than Congress actually doing anything?
As you mentioned before, we have the basically the largest yoga institute in my district, and as a result, even though I really worry that it's a slippery slope, I am familiar with a lot of Zen thought, and I believe sometimes the man who does the most is actually the man who does the least.
You know, that makes eminent sense. And, I guess I first became familiar with you, I guess, not quite a year ago. It was back in June of 2024 when Reuters had quoted you, and it was your comments about your view that the Trump trial was unfair. And could you explain to our listeners why you thought it was unfair?
So, as you know, in our jury system, in our legal system, every person should have a right, as long as the president agrees with this, to make their case of why they are innocent. And I thought Trump did so beautifully. Unfortunately, during the trial, as he is trying to prove his innocence, there's a whole nother set of lawyers trying to prove he's guilty, which to me seems like legal interference.
Well, yeah, I agree. I'm an attorney, and I've never really understood how that works either, and how anyone could consider that to be a fair system. But I saw where you were quoted in the Chinese media. They were kind of took offense to some of the things that you said. That you said, kind of screw China. If they don't want to buy American beef, then we'll sell it to India. Have you been able to resolve the tensions with China over your comments?
I have not. However, I understand it was a negative commentary, but what I found is if you translate it back into English, it comes up a lot more positive. So yeah, I'm hoping to kind of use it as some kind of a press release.
Yeah. You're also quoted in the European media when there was a cyber attack on X and on Elon, and you were quoted in that piece along with other members of Congress. I think it was Representative Don Bacon, Senator Mark Kelly, and yourself were all quoted in the article. So what was your take on that cyber attack on Elon and on X?
Well, I was worried you were going to talk about the El Salvador situation because I got quoted with that one too. The attack on X, I just think that nobody wants these kind of attacks. I think they're really bad for business. They're bad for cybersecurity. And I think it's up to Elon to give these attackers a portion of X now so that we can have peace.
Well, Representative Kimball, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've been following you on X. I don't really understand you most of the time, but
Yeah, it's
so
okay.
what's that?
I don't either. It's okay.
All right. Well, you know that India is full of Hindus that don't eat beef, right?
Right.
So
And
why would you suggest that we move our China exports to India? Isn't that kind of a stupid suggestion?
This is typical liberal thinking. Yeah, there's a lot of Hindus in India, and yes, they don't eat beef right now because, of their own, religious and cultural reasons. However, they did not get all those beef commercials that we did in the 80s. India is what they call a growth market. I think we have a lot, if you noticed how popular like Yellowstone is, we've got a lot.
Yeah, I loved that show. Yeah.
We've got like a lot of rancher actors who are getting famous now. They can certainly be doing the "Hey, beef, it's what's for dinner, India" kind of thing.
Well,
And I
Kevin
think
Costner isn't part of that show anymore, though.
I know, but he's kind of lefty anyway. But still, we could be really marketing them. India isn't ready for Madison Avenue. India isn't ready for Leo Burnett. India, I guarantee, we can convince those people. Yeah, the religion. I mean, look how many tenets of Christianity we've managed to strip from Christianity. You don't think we can't strip not eating beef from Hinduism?
Yeah, well, you ought to legislate it, actually.
You
You
know,
ever thought about that?
it's tricky because it's another country.
Well, that doesn't stop us anywhere else, does it?
No, but unfortunately, since it's another country, only the president can actually legislate that.
Oh, that's true. I hadn't thought about it that way. So, listen, let's switch gears a little bit here.
Sure.
Sex and rock and roll, maybe. So, one of our favorite members of Congress is Lauren Boebert. We call her Beetlejuice Boebert because we
Oh
have
yeah,
ever.
she's
Yeah.
amazing. Of all of
Now, the big rumor is that you guys got something going down. What's the truth there? Come on now.
No, I mean, this is just part of working together and collaborating. Lauren is very hands-on, and because of that, we've worked very closely. And I don't see any reason, this has to be all theatrical. It's just, working kind
Well,
of.
how do you feel about do you think she's a liberal lover or a conservative lover?
I think she's very much she used to definitely be further right, but now that she's a great grandmother, I think she's much more down the middle.
She's a great grandmother. I thought she was just
Right.
a grandmother.
Well, but she's great at it.
According to whom?
If you notice, none of her family's been arrested in like the last 3 or 4 months.
That's true. That's true. God probably planted that seed in their heads, right?
Definitely, yeah, she's definitely mellowing, and I like to think the rest of the family has also mellowed, or at least got pants that are harder to remove.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Have you ever met her mother? Her mother claims to be quite the lover too, you know.
um, I really have been advised not to talk about any meetings with her mother.
So you've had meetings.
Again, legal counsel has said I really should not be talking about that.
What's that? Are you Lauren's father?
I can't say.
Why?
Legally, there could be repercussions.
Well, we don't do bullshit here. If you're just gonna backpedal like a typical Republican, then why are we even having this conversation?
I might possibly be her father, but
See, I knew I'd get the truth out of you, Jack.
the list is huge.
Yeah. All right. What about this other knucklehead that Mo ran against? And I think Mo actually won that election because I think it was rigged, and he should be in Congress right now. But he ran against this face humping guy, Madison Cawthorn. Have you ever been involved in a face humping with Cawthorn?
No, I mostly know Madison through his videos,
Right.
instead of, but I will say that he definitely is an outside the box thinker.
That's true. That's true. Have you ever wished you could face hump him or he face hump you?
No, but I mean, that's just kind of the luck of where the keys go, you know.
What does that mean?
Everybody.
What does that mean?
Oh well, whenever we have a caucus, generally there's a dish up at the front of the room. We put our keys in there, and
I saw that movie. That was pretty good.
yeah, it just depends whose keys you got, really.
Yeah. So seriously, what? How about a threesome with Cawthorn and Bober?
Mm. Who would be the third?
You.
Oh, ouch.
No.
Um, just because of the possibility that Lauren might be my offspring, I wouldn't want to do that.
Oh, that's true. I'd forgotten about that. I apologize, Congressman. That was completely out of order. We should take down those words, probably.
Wow, it just occurred to me that I would be a great grandfather.
Probably. Okay, Mo, I'm going to take a little break here and send it back to you.
All right. Well, Congressman Kimball, I'm curious about your book, Detective Jesus, Thou Shalt Not Kill. What was your inspiration for that?
Um, it's actually Detective Jesus #1, Thou Shalt Not Kill. There may be a sequel coming up. So I guess what happened is I was eating breakfast, and it was one of those bizarre things where you're toasting bread and you take the bread out of the toaster and you look at it, and you can't deny it. It's Jesus's image on the toast. And at that same time, I was watching a rerun on UTV of Mannix. They have both Mannix and Cannon, or at least they used to, early in the morning, which was great. So I'm watching Mannix and I'm seeing this image of Jesus on my toast. And as I take a bite, I'm thinking, Jesus and Mannix. You could really combine those two and tell a riveting story. I like to think it's the third greatest story ever told, actually. And in this particular, book, I tried to do a lot of the tropes of the great 70s and 80s detectives. So, for instance, his commanding officer, his lieutenant, who's by the book. Well, who's more by the book in the Bible than Pontius Pilate? So his lieutenant is actually a descendant of Pontius Pilate, which I think really kind of helps to center everything biblically.
And you said there the sequel. Any give the audience any hints on when you think that might be?
I'm not really sure. I'm currently working on a book about FDR running in the 1936 Olympics. But it's called President Lightning.
Jack,
yes.
He was in a wheelchair.
Okay.
That's not appropriate.
FDR had everybody thinks FDR had polio. He did not. He had Guillain-Barré syndrome, and that gives you weakened reflexes. Well, a lot of people don't know Herbert Hoover was actually very into physical fitness and physical therapy. He invented a sport called Hoover ball, which was basically volleyball with a medicine ball, which I don't know how there aren't a lot of broken wrists. They still play it at the Hoover Presidential Library. They have a tournament every year. Well, Herbert Hoover develops a way to give a human superhuman reflexes. Unfortunately, no normal person could take it. But because Guillain-Barré syndrome, I think named after, I'm not sure who that's named after, but what it did was with his weakened reflexes, it just made him one of the fastest men alive.
Wow. Hey, I'm curious too. I've been reading where there's a bidding war between Martin Scorsese and Tyler Perry for movie rights to Detective Jesus. There's any update on how that's going?
Actually, I had hoped for a television show originally.
Isn't there more money in movies though, isn't there?
Well, I think Jesus, as a detective, just works better in an episodic format. David Simon, who did The Wire, liked a lot of it, but his problem was he just didn't understand why Jesus couldn't just revive the victim from the dead and ask him who killed him. And
That, that is a conundrum.
I really didn't have an answer, so I'm kind of working on figuring out why, and then I'm going to probably repitch it.
Well, so you caught some grief in USA Today last year when you had commented on the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance.
I thought it was perfectly valid criticism. I mean, everybody was ready to like declare that, Walsh did, did great, and I just thought it was perfectly valid criticism. I thought JD.
Hey, Representative Kimball.
Yes.
Yeah, could you please not interrupt? I know you're a Republican. You guys think you can do that kind of shit, but I think Mo had a question.
Well, no, I'm not.
I didn't realize there's a question in all of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, your critique of the debate came out 12 hours before the debate.
Well, Twitter lets you preload questions. You can post them to come out at a later time.
That's odd.
And I've been doing that all season with like the White Sox, who are a baseball team I quite like, and no one criticized me for it. I'd say hard loss, and the game might not have started yet, and nobody had a problem with that. But all of a sudden, when it's my job, people don't like you giving your feedback on the debate before it's happened.
Well, yeah, probably because it's a long, boring answer like you just gave a second ago. But so back to Congress. Who is your favorite member of the House these days?
There's so many. It's really hard. I liked Matt Gaetz a lot. I hate to see him go. I would probably say Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Fritos? What do you call her? What's your nickname for her?
The distinguished lady.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's distinguishing about her?
Mostly the way she carries herself. She always is class, which is a nice quality. We were on a really we were on a flight back together going west from Washington, and I was stopping off in Denver, so we're on the same flight. And we were supposed to be on first class. And unfortunately, there was a problem and we both wound up in coach. And Marjorie was really, really irate. And, the stewardess tried to talk to her and had problems. And finally, the co-pilot goes back. And the co-pilot explained to her that the coach was going to be going to Denver, but first class would actually be going to New York. And she was able to handle it and said, okay, well, at least coach is going to get me where I want to go.
Yeah, that's very distinguished. So what about Trump? Have you, I assume you and Donald are pretty good friends?
I wouldn't say good friends, but we're definitely buds.
Yeah.
On the bud level.
And where is his wife these days?
What
happened to our first lady?
Which one?
Well, I thought there was just
Melania.
one. Melania.
The first Melania. Yeah, she's around. Very, very loving. But remember, she's got a background as a model. So, like, it's not unusual that she wants to use her best pictures, even if they were from the first term.
Got it. But she's not really playing a role as first lady, a traditional role.
She's not playing a role.
Got it. Okay.
Do you know how many actors would kill to get paid as much per appearance as she does?
That's true. So do you think they're actually married, or I saw some headlines a couple of weeks ago that they're actually separated?
You can be married and separated.
Well, like legally separated. They're not sharing a bedroom anymore.
Well, the problem with sharing a bedroom is, now it's not so bad now that he's president, but remember, he had a lot of files to store. And
that's true, and it makes for a lumpy bed, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So if you, who are you going to support in the next election for president?
I think the real question is who's going to support me of the next candidates.
So you're announcing?
No, I'm looking for bids. I would like a cabinet position. I would like if I can't get a cabinet position, I want an ambassadorship and not to one of those crappy countries. But I have run for president before, and now if Donald wants to step down, I certainly will consider doing it again.
Right. All right. Well, here's an idea, Jack.
Mhm.
Why don't you change your name to Trump Donald and run on that ticket?
That's not bad. That's not bad. The only thing I worry about is if I change my name and run on the ballot, and JD runs on the ballot, we don't know what name he'll be using this time.
It's true.
And this could really confuse people.
Well, yeah, he's what is the name
Hey,
he uses these days? JD or
Ashley
I,
Furniture?
oh yeah, or is that Jack Daniels? Jack
yeah.
Daniels Vance.
No, you're
Hey,
thinking of you're thinking of Pete.
hey, what do
Uh,
you think? Who do you think's going to change first? Trump changing wives or JD changing names?
Um, JD changes names more often than he changes sofas, so I'm probably gonna go there. You know.
Hey, I'm curious. Donald Trump is kind of the working man's president, and he really loves the common people. So he and his family are opening a club called the Executive Branch there in Washington, where ordinary people can join for $500,000. Are you planning on joining their everyman club?
I don't know. I heard from a friend of mine, Stormy, that the executive branch is actually more of a mushroom.
Ah,
what the hell
well,
does that? What the hell does that mean?
It's a euphemism. I would say maybe after the interview, you and Mo could talk about it, and he could probably explain it to you.
I might have to draw a picture, but I think I can get it across.
That's a hard pass on that.
Yeah.
I think I just figured it out.
Now, Stormy said it's not that hard. Uh,
Well, Jack,
well,
so what is your main issue in Congress these days? And then secondly, do you think the big beautiful bill is actually going to pass the Senate?
well, I would say the biggest. I would at first. I do think the big beautiful bill will pass the Senate. I definitely do. I think.
Do you think Trump will sign it?
Oh, for sure. If yeah, you just got to point that guy in the right direction. I have heard that Susan Collins is concerned, but I think she'll come around. And in terms of what I'm working on right now, the biggest issue I think the American people are facing is a lot of issues with naming stuff. I really am offended every time I look at the U.S. map and I see New Mexico. I would like to change that to New America.
Okay.
I think that I can get the support.
What about California? Should we rename that to something?
Kimblefornia has a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now we can keep it. But yeah, Kimblefornia I would like to eventually have.
Okay. So let's talk big picture here. What are you sure that Trump's going to sign that bill? He tends to negotiate with himself and argue with himself quite a bit. And you sure that big beautiful bill wasn't just one misdirection on his part, big misdirection, and he's actually going to maybe do something for the poor people in this country or folks that need a little bit of help?
No, I think he will sign it, and then if he can sign it, and it is as disastrous as some people think it will be, then if he does run for re-election in 2028, he can run against it.
That's true.
Well, that's great. That's like fifth dimensional chess when everybody else is playing
God, he's
checkers.
playing like 13th dimensional 300.
Are
Guy
there 13 dimensions?
and Hungry Hungry Hippos. It's a Parker Brothers game.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you think he'll sign it and then run against it in 28?
Yeah, that I think is the plan.
Because it was the liberals. He was forced into signing it by the liberals.
Yes.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, over to you, Mo, I think.
Well, yeah, I know you gave him high marks for his brilliant. He repealed Biden's executive order on prescription drug costs, and then he signed an executive order that was exactly like Biden's. And I mean, you got to admit that's strategy.
Oh, it totally is. And I think that's just part of the art of the deal. What happens is what you want to let your opponents know is if this is what we're willing to do to executive orders we agree with, just think what we'll do if we don't agree with it.
What's your take on in the big beautiful bill? There's a provision that essentially strips the judiciary of any ability to enforce. If the executive branch, the president, Pete Hegseth, take your pick. If they break the law and the court holds them in contempt, the bill strips the courts of any power to enforce their orders, which seem to kind of contradict this notion of separation of powers. But how do you feel about it?
I feel that the main purpose when our founding fathers created judicialism, 200 years ago or so, I think that the reason was they didn't want judges to get in the way of the president. And what better way to get them out than to have the branch I'm in? I can't think of the name right now. The branch I'm in.
The legislative, Jack.
Thank you. Legislative branch.
Oh, have you been drinking this morning?
No, I haven't even seen Pete yet. You guys, how up are you on 90s music? Because
I went to college during the late 80s and early 90s.
Have you ever heard he drinks a whiskey drink, he drinks a vodka drink, he drinks
yes.
He drinks a cider drink. Okay. That's Pete's Tuesday lunch order.
Okay.
So I was just I'll be catching up with Pete later. We usually
I thought he stopped drinking. Technically
he did.
Why are you laughing?
Well, he did stop drinking that day. But it was another day. We generally like to.
It's all about semantics with Pete.
He's not anti-Semitic, no. Well, we like to go out with Judge Pirro.
Yeah, she's a big poozer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, her first move is Attorney General or not Attorney General, this
U.S. Attorney.
U.S. Attorney, thank you, was to.
I think he's been drinking.
Yeah, it was to keep the bars open until 8:30 a.m. So.
Well, and you can thank our senator from here in North Carolina, Tom Tillis, for us having Judge Boxelwine as the U.S. Attorney, because he killed the first nominee off, and so in place of that, incompetent person, we get Judge Boxelwine to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. So you got Pete Hegseth on one end of the ellipse, and you got Judge Boxelwine on the other.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Hegseth is going to save the military, so much money just by recycling bottles. And I think people underestimate that. You
don't think they recycle right now?
No, there's just more bottles to recycle.
Oh, I see. So the volume of beer bottles and alcohol bottles, I assume,
right,
is what you're talking about. So listen, I do have a serious question though. If what would be your choice? Would it be Kristi Noem or Judge Pirro?
Well, that's a tough one. I was involved with Kristi Noem briefly. Right.
Oh my God, are you serious? We're breaking more news. I saw that she and that knucklehead from New Hampshire. What's his name?
Corey Lewandowski.
Yeah, Lewandowski was with her over the weekend. Did you know that?
Right, I was between Lewandowskis.
You're dating Lewandowski's wife?
No,
that would be awkward.
Not married, but I was after the first affair. Well, I'm not supposed to talk about it that way. After her first business arrangement with Corey, and before her second with Corey. So.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's tough because Judge Pirro drinks so much that you can't even feel your face, which is probably good if you're going to be around Kristi.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's kind of, it's kind of like a team act, I guess.
Yeah. And does she dress up? Would she dress up when you guys were together in one of her famous outfits?
Oh yeah.
She must have closet upon closet of cosplay.
Well, that's one of the things. Do you know that her department is only paid 40% from our tax dollars?
I didn't know that, Congressman.
60% comes from a sponsorship from Spirit Halloween.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a big sponsorship, dude.
They have a lot of they have a lot of
Is that
stories.
how? Where would we find that budget? I wonder.
Probably Mar-a-Lago bathroom.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I guess over to you. Maybe for one more, Mo, or are you done with this guy?
Yeah, no. Let me. Well, I guess we could. I guess our listeners have probably figured out by this point that Representative Kimball could potentially be a fictional character, and so I wanted to ask in real life, are you surprised at how often people pick up your stuff and run with it?
I'm only a little bit surprised. It's always happened. I guess I first kind of came to prominence, if you want to call it that, back in 2010 when Jonathan Capehart did a story about me. I said that Bush had managed to fight two wars without without any expenditures because he kept them off the books. But nowadays, people are so angry. I'll post really, really obvious stuff and people will just fly off the handle really quick. I have some stuff which I know is really like if you don't look really carefully, you might fall for it. But I post some stuff which are like so over the top. I just did one the other day where if you've ever seen that picture from Trump's first term of the guy with the big sign that says like get a brain, morons.
Yeah, that's what you're talking
I
about.
said we were boycotting Harvard, and I used the picture of him, and I would say 20 to 30% took it seriously. And I'm
Yeah,
like, that is such an old and famous picture, you know?
yeah. Well, no, some of your stuff really is subtle, but
Oh yeah,
some of it's so over the
oh,
top that
you know.
yeah, some of it's so over the top that you just have to question whether the person that takes it seriously whether they've been drinking.
And my favorite is like there was one I posted a couple of weeks ago where the first two lines are about how the tariffs are going to be good and help us, and the third line is just so over the top. And I just noticed how many people like angrily replied before they got to the third line. It's like 280 characters. That's a lot of reading. I don't have a bookmark. I'm just going to do the first line and give you my gut instinct, you know?
Yeah. Well,
So.
you and I have something in common. Back in 2014, there was Obama got a bunch of criticism. General Harold Green was the highest ranking U.S. military officer killed during the war in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
And he caught a bunch of grief for not going to General Green's funeral in August of 2014. And, the right wing was just, going nuts, how disrespectful it was. And so I put out a tweet saying, yes, it's shame that President Obama broke the tradition set by President Nixon and President Bush. And I named a couple of generals that had been killed during Vietnam and the Iraq War and said that, they had honorably attended those funerals and President Obama, broke tradition and people just ran with it. In fact, there's a journalist, a guy named Byron York, is a writer for the Washington Examiner, and he ran with it. And then a couple of days later, I got a text message from Byron York going, is there any authority that, for about Nixon and Bush going to those funerals? And I said, hell no, there's not. I put it out there just to see, show how gullible people are that, if you're looking, they could have taken 30 seconds and Googled what I had written and seen that it was bullshit, but it supported the narrative that they wanted, that Obama was a jerk. And so they just ran with it. So I ended up with a second article by Byron York. I think the title was "You Can't Trust Anything That Colonel Davis Says."
There you go. You know where I got the idea for Jack Kimball actually was my sister graduated from Notre Dame, got her master's from Notre Dame in 1985, I want to say. Might be wrong on the year. And they were giving the honorary degree that year to Duarte, the dictator of El Salvador. And then when Obama went to speak at Notre Dame back in like 2008, there were all these articles from the right wing about this is such a disgrace to Notre Dame. This is the most immoral person ever to speak at Notre Dame. And I'm like, okay, you might be able to make a case that General Sherman might have shortened the war or something, but like there were so many people in that like Notre Dame list, like, okay, he's got death squads. He wore a tan suit. These really aren't comparable. And so I did an op-ed, because I had a satirical right-wing blog already called That's Right, Nate. And Jack started as a character on that blog. And it was to criticize or make fun of the right wingers who were saying, like, this about Obama when it hadn't been that long ago that they had an El Salvadorian dictator with death squads. So,
Yeah. Hey, I know you recently you were a career educator and recently retired.
right.
I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on, the Republicans are slashing everything, and certainly, here where David and I live in the mountains of North Carolina, the Medicaid cuts are going to be bad for tens of thousands of people. But I'm curious, as a professional educator, what's your take on these cuts to education and getting rid of the Department of Education?
So first off, in terms of educational philosophy, the department really is not very important. It doesn't really make it down to the states, and it certainly doesn't make it down to the schools. And I will say, as crazy as Betsy DeVos was, Arnie Duncan was actually a worse Secretary of Education because nobody pushed privatization as much as he did. However, I taught at a school with a ton of Title I students. We were a Title I school. We got a big chunk of money we needed for extra resources for students who needed extra resource.
And and for folks who are Title I is funding for low income, impoverished students.
And that's, I was in an urban school, but there's rural schools that are hit really hard with this too. IEPs, things for students with special needs. There are just so many things, that that department does, and I guarantee that's going to get lost. And I think there's going to be some major funding changes with public education that are not good. But I've always felt that with education, what they've always wanted to do is find a way to make the public education as poor as possible, and then allow tax money to go to private schools and charter schools too. Which charter schools already get money, but that's a little complicated story. Private schools to, with vouchers and stuff to, so that they can put their hand, just kind of like they do with insurance, so they can kind of put their hand in that tax money and grab some.
Well, they're doing the same thing too. I'm a veteran. I go to the VA hospital for healthcare, and they've been trying to find a way to profitize the VA, and it seems like that's always the angle: is how can our rich donors make a buck off of this rather than performing the mission that the agency's intended for. But I'm curious too. There's been this, I know, like our congressman here, Chuck Edwards, and I'm running against, put out a thing. There's Teacher Appreciation Day recently, and he put out a thing praising teachers, and then like 2 or 3 days later, there's a piece on how public education are nothing but liberal indoctrination centers. So to me, it's appalling, this demonization of public education and public school teachers. I'm just curious, what you were there in the trenches. What's like morale and what's it like being a public teacher nowadays?
It's not good. I did it about 25 years, and people like to point to like COVID. Everything changed with COVID, but honestly, it had started maybe 2 or 3 years before COVID, where it feels like, again, how do donors get money? We're being told everything we can teach, where the everything we went to school for has become kind of useless. It's all babysitting now. And it's all about, bureaucracy, and it just, the teaching part. I've always loved the students, and I always, my favorite part now is, because I was teaching 25 years ago, so many of my old students have found me and let me know, hey, you really made a difference. And that's great, because, you plant, plant something, and you get to see that it actually grew into something pretty cool. But yeah, teacher morale is really low. And it's one of the things. They've been demonizing it so long that not only are people trying to get out, but nobody's going into it. And they're constantly trying to find ways they can use computers to shove like 50 people in a classroom so that they don't need as many teachers.
Well, I have a lot of respect for educators and everything you're doing for those kids. What can we slip back in character for a second, if you don't mind, and ask Jack Kimball to come back? Jack, what would be your advice to Mo Davis on how to beat a fellow Republican and put you in the minority? My friend Mo.
Difficult question. So Mo, am I not mistaken? You're a colonel?
I'm retired.
Okay. You got a white beard, white mustache, white hair. You're a colonel. You're running for office in the South. To me, one of my heroes was a man named Colonel Sanders. I would try and orient my campaign. I'm not saying I'm Colonel Sanders, but I'm not saying I'm not Colonel Sanders.
Isn't he dead?
That's why you're not saying you are Colonel Sanders.
Got it.
I mean, let's be honest. JFK Jr. is dead.
Yeah.
And they were using him for how many years before they said, I'd use RFK Jr., I guess.
Oh, well, I'm not following you, so...
I just said Trump was running with a dead person as support, so there's no reason.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I think we need to put this to an end, Mo.
All right.
Wow,
so, Representative, sorry, Mo, did you have anything else?
I didn't. I'm just trying to take notes on that political advice. So
I'm not sure.
All that money I'm spending on consultants, I'm getting it for free here.
Well, it might be the Costanza rule on that one, where you do the opposite of what they tell you to do. But Representative Kimball, where can folks learn a little bit more about you?
Well, I have my jackkimball.com page, which definitely needs to be updated. I am Rep Jack Kimball on Twitter, and I am same name on Blue Sky. I think I spend more time on Twitter because there are more Republican crazies over there, and so my people. I definitely will have. I've got, as I said, I've actually got 2 books out. I also have Profiles in Courageousness, which came out a long time ago, and I'll continue writing. I'm actually just starting now to try to get into stand-up. So
yeah, well, I'm not sure that we care about that. But jackkimball.com, Kimble.
Correct.
Are you running for re-election?
Yeah, always. Otherwise, I'd have to
take bribes, or does it have to be FEC approved money?
I've never been convicted of anything. Indictments are not convictions.
That's true.
Yeah.
And he was almost 16, right?
Almost.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anything to add, Mo?
No, I'm been another fascinating 45
This has
minutes.
been a terrific waste of my morning. Nothing personal.
No.
Oh, is he still on here? I'm sorry.
He's still on here, yeah. And if
all right,
if
I think you're probably the worst guest we've ever had, Jack, to be honest with you.
If I had any serious work to do,
no, you're kind of an asshole, I think. So I've never called anybody an asshole on this show, at least while we were live, and I think you're one of them. But all right, well, that's a wrap on this week's Muck You, where we dug deep into the political dirt and came out swinging, mostly. Huge thanks to our guest, Jack Kimball, the quote, Congressman, end quote, from California, for bringing laughs, sharp takes on, and the absurdity of it all. Jack, you're a legend. Thanks for joining us. You'll never be back.
Always happy to be a swinger.
Yeah, well, that's true. Please follow us on Blue Sky at American Muckrakers and learn more and donate at AmericanMuckrakers.com. On behalf of my co-host and the next congressman from North Carolina 11, a real guy, Colonel Mo Davis, stay sharp, stay loud, and keep shoveling. And if a Trumper bothers you, remember to remind them, muck you.
This has been Muck You, co-hosted by Colonel Mo Davis in Asheville, North Carolina, and David Wheeler in Spruce Pine, North Carolina. Thanks to our guest today, Congressman Jack Kimball, not really a member of Congress from California. Learn more about Jack at jackkimble.com or follow Rep. Jack Kimball on X or Blue Sky. Muck You is produced by American Muckrakers, copyright 2025. Follow us on Blue Sky under AmericanMuckrakers.com and on Substack at AmericanMuckrakers.substack.com. You can learn more and donate at AmericanMuckrakers.com. David and Mo hope y'all come back soon for a new episode. And remember to never take shit from anyone, especially Trumpers.